of the Port of LA. Mr. Gene Soroka, the Executive Director of the Port of LA, will tell us a little bit more about how port assets and relationships can battle COVID-19. With that, we would like to meet Mr. Soroka via video.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to participate in the 8th Annual Busan International Port Conference. I want to especially thank Busan Port Authority CEO Nam Kai Chan for bringing us together virtually as we near the end of a year marked by extraordinary challenges and hardships. As I speak to you today from Los Angeles, I am sad to report that the spread of the COVID-19 virus continues to rise here in the United States. Federal government response to the disease has been limited, and many state and local governments are struggling to control the virus spread. Having lived and worked in China during SARS back in 2003, I had a particular vantage point on the impact of the virus. My SARS experience shaped my perspective about COVID-19. And this year, through the horrific pandemic, all of us have gained valuable expertise in handling this deadly virus. As the numbers worldwide indicate, COVID-19 is not done yet. By sharing our experiences, we can hasten the end of this pandemic and be ready to mobilize and engage in the battle against future atrocities. The role of ports and maritime industry stakeholders has been critical throughout this crisis, effectively managing and repairing our respective supply chains amounts to a form of humanitarian aid. With that said, I hope that our story at the Port of Los Angeles is a good case study for how ports can help save lives during a crisis like this. Last December, when news reports emerged about COVID-19's outbreak in China, we discontinued overseas travel. By February, we stopped all domestic travel here in the U.S. Very early on, I saw COVID-19 being 10, 15, 20 times as damaging as SARS, just from an economic viewpoint. However, the global economic damage is much worse than many have imagined. Earlier this month, the International Monetary Fund estimated COVID-19 will cost our global economy a staggering 28 trillion US dollars over the next 5 years. More ominous than the economic impact was the bigger recognition that this pandemic would be a public health crisis like no other. This was a virus that we collectively as citizens of the world needed to quickly curb and eradicate. Our instincts at the start of 2020 set the stage for team building and early operational actions at our port. Our team strategy was driven by the idea that if we brought smart and talented people together, we had a strong definition of our mission, and we made ourselves accessible to all port stakeholders, then we just might have a chance to succeed. I wanted critical thinkers and doers around me. It didn't matter if they were senior executives, mid-level managers, or technical specialists. They just needed to be motivated, team-oriented, and able to work outside their comfort zone. On March 19th, coming under the emergency stay-at-home orders of California Governor Gavin Newsom, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti, and the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, as an essential entity, we were recognized that we had the infrastructure, capabilities, and talent in place to go into these uncharted waters and help our region battle the coronavirus. As our economy shut down and the work environment started to look very different, our industry stakeholders began approaching us with questions around the definition of the so-called essential worker and what that meant for a truck driver, warehouse worker, or port administrator. As a team, our first order of business was to quickly give confidence to the supply chain and its workforce. In response to the confusion, we immediately started engaging with our federal, state, and local governments to help craft the necessary information which would define the business sectors and workers that were originally considered essential. And since port operations were essential, we needed to make sure that those who participated on the ground from a workforce standpoint were also classified as essential workers. This initial engagement with industry stakeholders and policymakers was extremely crucial. When we succeeded, I was very encouraged by how our team at the port, our city, and our private sector partners all came together. We focused on what would happen next, who needed to take what policy position, and how we could best maintain the flow of medical supplies along with other essential cargo through our port. It was around this time Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti and I had a series of brief discussions about the emerging shortage of personal protective equipment. We saw the horrific surge of the pandemic in New York City and the growing number of hospitals with shortages of medical masks, gloves, gowns, and other essential supplies. Based on our observations, Mayor Garcetti and I had an immediate alignment in focusing our efforts on helping our frontline medical workers. Not long after that, the mayor appointed me to the additional role of Chief Logistics Officer for the city of Los Angeles. And we outlined 3 core tenets of the logistics function supporting this crisis. 1, Los Angeles International Airport and the Port of Los Angeles would be used to expedite goods to our frontline medical workers. In addition, because of our years of work in this space, we leveraged our strong relationships with domestic transportation providers to focus on how we could move critical cargo quicker with more efficiency and visibility. 2, we would create some direct-to-manufacturer relationships to procure the essential medical supplies. And 3, we quickly identified some local manufacturers that wanted to convert their production lines to produce gloves, gowns, masks, and other essential goods. We didn't know what this process would entail, but we knew we could create some alignment with those companies because they not only had a sense of mission to help, but also a strong desire to bring their employees back to work. The combination of the willingness and talent of these companies was very appealing to us and led to the formation of relationships with organizations like the California Manufacturing and Technology Association in order to create more dialogue around the personal protective equipment manufacturing effort. By the end of March, with hundreds of port and city employees working from home, today we still have roughly 370 employees working from home, which is about 40% of our organization at the port. From the beginning, we were very sensitive to the fact that we had employees with young families, homebound school children, elderly family members, and other loved ones in need of extra care. However, with our organization, we formed a core team of about 24 workers who voluntarily raised their hands, were willing to stay in constant contact by phone and video, and were eager to play a role in our mission. Those volunteers hit the ground running with the goal of making sure that our team leaders had everything we needed lined up to give us the best chance of success. Less than 2 weeks after establishing the Chief Logistics Officer function, our team created what was essentially a new department in the city, centered around an effort we called Logistics Victory Los Angeles, or Love LA for short. The name Logistics Victory harkens back to an era when resources were mobilized at this port to build hundreds of Victory-class cargo ships to get much-needed supplies to those fighting on the front line during World War II. Today, we carry that same spirit in our fight against COVID-19. Early in our effort, we saw a large group of regional healthcare providers that needed personal protective equipment. On the other side, we saw a large market of brokers and manufacturers of these critical supplies. In response, we created an online marketplace where we could match suppliers with those in need of supplies. In the first several weeks of the program, we vetted nearly 700 leads. Most sources were legitimate, but we also encountered fraudulent opportunists selling counterfeit products. After a few weeks of understanding the marketplace, we stepped into the procurement process. That's when we formed a relationship with the iconic American company Honeywell Corporation to drive N95 mask procurement and distribution. We contracted with Honeywell to deliver to the city of Los Angeles 24 million N95 masks over a 2-year period at a total cost of $20 million US, which works out to 79 US cents per mask. These masks are being used to replenish our city's emergency stockpile. As a service of the city of Los Angeles, they are also being distributed through Love LA to medical providers at cost, with no markup and no margin. To date, we have distributed more than 2.9 million units of personal protective equipment and other supplies to 36 Los Angeles area hospitals and 122 skilled nursing facilities. Through Love LA, international companies like Apple, Toyota, and the shipping giant CMA CGM, along with regional trucking companies, retailers, and other businesses, have also donated medical and other critical supplies. In the spirit of their philanthropy and kindness to others, we have helped to coordinate the distribution of those donations. During this crisis, we are also looking at how we can leverage our port community system, the Port Optimizer, to assist hospitals in the management of their medical supply chains. The Medical Optimizer, as we now call it, can provide these organizations with a more detailed look at their personal protective equipment order cycle process. In doing so, they are able to respond to early demand signals on low inventories of specific supplies and more effectively track those supplies as they are en route to our port and airport. Those shipments can also be identified for priority delivery before arrival. There is still much more work to be done. Because these supplies are not household items, it is difficult to procure and maintain inventories of medical-grade masks, gloves, gowns, and other items. Based on what we have learned, I have 3 final observations to share with you today. 1, to cities facing similar predicaments with limited resources, there is a tremendous benefit to appointing a chief logistics officer to oversee the medical supply chain and assist in procurement of critical goods. As port leaders, you can help your cities and regions navigate the logistics side of crisis response. 2, communication is the key to success. Under normal circumstances, the hospitals and nursing facilities we're helping would source their supplies through traditional channels. However, in a crisis like this, it is imperative to over-communicate and not only engage with the organizations caring for the sick, but also with the local health agencies to identify needs and establish alignment that leads to success. 3, because many workers have family and other challenges to contend with in times of crisis, there is a tremendous benefit to assembling a volunteer team who not only have the extra capacity to take on more work, but also a strong spirit and sense of mission. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share our Love LA program details with you here. This has been a learning year for all of us, and forums like the BIPC provide an outstanding opportunity to share stories and learn from each other. To that end, we look forward to hearing from you. On behalf of our team here in Los Angeles, I would like to extend our best wishes to all of you in the coming weeks and months as we work to ultimately defeat COVID-19.
네, 박수 한번 부탁드리겠습니다.
Please give him a big round of applause.